Morning, everyone. Sorry, I keep forgetting I have myself on mute every single time. Welcome. Let's get rid of our music here. Welcome to Resistance Live. I'm going to get rid of my banner. Hello. Okay, so it's Friday morning, and this is Resistance Live. I'm so tired, you guys. I was awake in the middle of the night reading the news. And we have so much to talk about. The headline from today's broadcast is I literally am beside myself, but let's do our usual stuff first. I'm ECM. Welcome. This is Resistance Live. It's the 22nd of September, 2023. We are approaching our 7-year anniversary very, very fast. I am wearing today a ribbed, cream-colored sweater. I've got on my big floral heavy-duty earrings. I really like these. They're super fun. My hair is pulled back today. I have not airbrushed out in any way, shape, or form. The bags under my eyes, and my hair is pulled back. I think I said that already. I'm tired, and I am a pink-skinned, green-eyed, blonde sort of woman with some gray these days, and I am really glad you're here. And I'm coming to you as always from occupied Tongva land, and my pronouns are she/her. Okay, I really just don't know what to say about this most recent breaking story about Clarence Thomas. So for those of you who haven't read it yet, in the middle of the night, ProPublica broke, who have been reporting quite consistently over the last several months about Clarence Thomas taking these private jets and all this other stuff at the behest of Leonard Leo and Harlan Crow and other really significant billionaire figures on the far right. Okay, so the thing about the prior reporting was that it was all for personal travel. And the excuse that was given by Clarence Thomas was that, this all fell within the hospitality exception to what you're supposed to report as a Supreme Court justice. The story that broke overnight is that Clarence Thomas has been attending what are essentially fundraisers, enormous fundraisers for the Koch brothers as their signature draw. And I want to just make something really clear here, okay? If you are a district court judge in federal court, or you are a court of appeals judge in federal court, and you engage in paid fundraising for any political endeavor, you will be immediately investigated and removed from the bench. Clarence Thomas, in any of his disclosures, never disclosed that he had been paid by, again, these same shady figures on the far right to fly to fundraisers for the Koch brothers' endeavors. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Koch brothers are, of course, billionaires. One of them has died. One of them died in 2019. But the two of them, Charles and David, have been active figures on the far right, pushing an extreme far right agenda for literally decades now. However, they run this foundation, and they don't like to use their own money to do this stuff. So they fundraise with other billionaires and extremely wealthy people on a routine basis. And one of the ways that they do this is that they have these events, one of which is a regular event in Palm Springs that they host. This is the one that Clarence Thomas went to, where he appeared literally at the fundraiser and was in conversation with other far right figures during these events for donors. And also that he went to this apparently annual event called Bohemian Grove, where various political figures, most of whom are on the far right, get together for 2 weeks at what sounds like an exclusive luxury locale in Sonoma County. No cell phones are allowed, where essentially they join these various houses on mountains for 2 weeks, and they spend their time figuring out how to essentially overthrow democracy and force a far right agenda. He's been a regular attendee there too, over and over and over again. Now, this will come as no surprise. The Koch brothers also have ongoing cases in front of the Supreme Court concerning attempts to overthrow the administrative state of the United States government. In fact, apparently, at one of these events, Clarence Thomas was overheard talking to various other officials about the fact that the administrative authority of the United States government may have gone too far, and he wasn't really a fan of this particular Supreme Court precedent that allowed the administrative state to set regulations. This is all so far beyond what has already been reported that it's kind of hard to fathom. And I know that some people have called for Clarence Thomas's resignation. I'm just going to tell you all that in light of the fact that he obviously is aware that if he was a district court judge or a circuit court judge and he did any of this stuff, he would be investigated and probably removed from the bench. And yet he has continued to do this for the better part of 2 decades, tells you everything you need to know about whether or not he's going to resign. So the only option here, fundamentally, in light of this very clear and obvious corruption and bias on his part, is for him to be impeached. And I will just tell you that impeachment proceedings could begin in the Senate like today if they wanted that to happen. I'm sure, by the way, Sheldon Whitehouse is all over this one this morning. But I will tell you that, not that I was speaking when I was reading this in the dark at like 2 a.m. here in California, but I literally was like, oh my God, when I read about him appearing at these fundraisers, because literally in the Judicial Code of Ethics for the district court and circuit court judges in this country, it expressly says you cannot engage in political fundraising activities. And this is apparently what Clarence Thomas has done over and over again at the behest of far-right figures, who, by the way, came to his defense, of course, no surprise, when they were asked to comment on all of this before ProPublica dropped the story. So, yeah, Josh, you actually raised a really good point here. Impeachment would have to start in the Senate because it's like, in the House, because it is like every other impeachment. So my apologies for misstating that. But there could be a request from the Senate Judiciary Committee, which, by the way, is responsible for overseeing judicial appointments and nominations and everything else, to begin impeachment proceedings. And I would not be surprised if Sheldon Whitehouse puts out that kind of a request today. So this is all rather shocking. Now, I know some people, because this has been all over my feed this morning, are very surprised that Ken Burns has been attending these Bohemian Grove gatherings. All right. So yes, the Koch brothers funded Ken Burns' films. Yes, I know this is a little bit surprising, but I'm also just going to tell you guys one other thing. From having practiced law in Washington, D.C. for 4.5 years or whatever it was before I started practicing in New York. And I went to law school in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of things that have been happening for a very long time now with Washington folks who are very powerful that a lot of average everyday Americans don't know about. Now, I didn't know about Bohemian Grove until I read about this morning, but I'm just going to mention that there's been a Democratic version of this that has taken place for many, many, many years at a resort in Virginia every year. And it draws in very senior Democratic officials. Now, this is, by the way, is not something that is hidden, all right? Bohemian Grove, no cell phones, no nothing. Let's get the guys together and talk about how to overthrow democracy and force far right-wing policies on everyone is a slightly different story. But there are these routine, regular gatherings of powerful people in Washington, D.C. every year where they get together and they talk policy. And I've known about the Democratic Party one for quite some time because I have a friend who I went to law school with who's a lobbyist who has attended it and had met the Clintons there and had met other senior Democratic officials there. Again, not something that has been kept hidden, but maybe not something that has necessarily not been known by the average everyday American. Bohemian Grove is a whole other ball of wax, all right? First of all, it's men only, which in and of itself is very distressing and disturbing. Second of all, it's 2 weeks long. And apparently, I mean, everybody should go read this ProPublica thing, but they're drinking $500 bottles of wine every night. There are stories about cabinet officials passing out drunk on the lawn and waking up there the next morning. There are photographs in some instances. I don't know how these photographs exist, but there are photographs, obviously, which is why everybody's so surprised about Ken Burns, of Clarence Thomas at these fundraising events with other officials. There's just an enormous amount of just shocking details in this ProPublica article. And I just really want to encourage everyone to go read it. I mean, there is no way at the bare minimum that Clarence Thomas should be ruling on any case before the Supreme Court that the Koch brothers or anyone of their ilk have brought. I mean, again, it's like this, I'm speechless about it. I mean, I'm obviously not speechless, but it feels that way. It's so stunningly over the line. That it's kind of hard to describe. So we're going to have to see how this comes to pass. But the other thing I will tell you is that ProPublica, credit where credit is due, has sources, like 5 of them, of people who have been inside Bohemian Grove and who have been inside these fundraisers in Palm Springs for the Koch brothers and have seen it all. And notwithstanding the fact that apparently, like, the security is so tight at these events that Uber drivers have been escorted out by security to make sure that they actually left the premises and couldn't see anything and couldn't report on anything and couldn't witness anything. People who have been there are obviously concerned enough about what this means for the Supreme Court that they're talking to Clarence Thomas about it. And there is a tiny other little bit of information in there about Ginny Thomas taking on various roles in relation to all of this. But I'm going to tell you, the stuff about Clarence is the stuff that is like just, I mean, appalling, like appalling. There's like no word for how far over the line this is. So I want everybody to keep their eyes on this, because I think this latest story has the potential to really break the dam wide open on whether or not he should really still be on the Supreme Court. So I just encourage everyone to go read it, and it's shared on my Threads feed this morning. Okay. All right, let's, not that that's not enough. Let's talk about another corruption scandal that has broken this morning, this time on our side of the fence. And this will come as no surprise to anybody, because Senator Robert Menendez was already tried for corruption, and that trial resulted in a mistrial. However, this morning he's been indicted again by Biden's DOJ. I'm just going to point out, like, and it's not Biden's DOJ, but I'm saying that because I just have to point out the irony of this, right? There, all the Republicans are claiming the DOJ has to be shut down. And, somebody correctly pointed out this morning that this DOJ has now indicted President Biden's son and a Democratic senator. I mean, I think we've got at least an argument to be made that, like, they're fair and impartial, but what do I know? I mean, I know a lot, but nonetheless, Senator Menendez has been indicted this morning, and whoo boy, are these allegations like quite significant. So apparently a search warrant was executed on Robert Menendez's home, and inside a jacket with his name on it and the Senate seal, they found $400,000 in cash and 2 gold bars valued at $60,000 apiece. On the envelopes containing the cash, they found the DNA of various officials linked to the Egyptian government. I'm going to mention, for those of you who don't know, that Senator Menendez sits on the Foreign Relations Committee. But wait, it gets worse. Apparently, after these payoffs, Senator Menendez, without the awareness of his staff or anyone else, turned over information about the identities of U.S. embassy employees in Egypt to an official linked to the Egyptian government. His career is over. Okay. And I'm just going to say that he didn't resign before when he was accused of corruption. I'm listening to the metronome clock tick down of how long he's actually going to be in office, because I don't think he's going to survive the day on this. And I'm also just going to mention that I would not be surprised if Chuck Schumer removes him from every committee before the day is out. This is possibly the most airtight case for bribery and corruption that I have ever seen. They have DNA evidence. They've got text messages. I mean, it is really, really deep on the evidence. So he's going to be gone. Now, for anybody who's worried about this, Phil Murphy is the governor of New Jersey. And I'm going to remind everybody that if any federal official resigns or is removed during their term, Phil Murphy will be responsible for replacing that person until a special election is held. So we're not losing a seat. All right. I guess that's what everybody should know, is that we're not losing a seat. And I also just have to tell everybody that, there's forfeiture allegations in this. Menendez is going to lose his home. He's going to lose all of his viable property. They're going to seize all of his assets. I mean, he's done, done. there's no way he's getting out of this one. So I think that we should all remember that Democrats respond very differently to these sorts of things than Republicans do. And I think he's going to be gone by the end of the day, but we'll see. All right. Okay. I have to make a correction about something that I said about the looming government shutdown earlier this week. And I want to talk about what's impacted, because one of the things that happened yesterday was that Kevin McCarthy didn't have the votes to pass the Defense Department spending bill, and he sent literally everybody home for the weekend without doing anything about the government shutdown. And again, I just have to remind everybody, this is yet another indication of how the far right wing of the party has Kevin McCarthy's you-know-what's in a noose, and essentially he's not doing anything because he's beholden to them. And I don't know how much longer he's going to be speaker. We're going to have to see. But the correction that I want to make about this is I said something earlier in the week about Social Security payments being implicated or affected if the government shuts down. That's not true. What is true, however, is that Medicare is affected. And so I apologize for the confusion, but those of you who are on Social Security don't have to worry about that. However, military service members are not going to get paid. Government employees are not going to get paid. Medicare payments are going to be held up, and so are certain services that are related to Medicare. National parks are going to shut down. We're going to see museums shut down. Airports are going to be affected. The fire aid to Maui is going to be implicated in this. We're going to see Social Security checks, as I said, but various other benefits related to Medicare and Medicaid are going to be impacted, and passport offices are going to close. Eventually, if the shutdown continues for an extended period of time, childcare will be cut off for poor families under the subsidies that are currently being provided. Nutrition services like SNAP will stop. And housing vouchers under Section 8 are going to disappear, and various other forms of federal government aid that people need to like stay alive. All right. So this is not small. And, the government's going to shut down in 8 days if something doesn't get passed. And I just have to say again that this is the far right wing holding the federal government hostage, like absolute hostage. And people's lives are on the line. Like people's lives are literally on the line as a result of this, whether or not people are going to be able to eat. Okay. Whether or not people are going to get medical care. It's horrific. And I also just have to remind everybody that back when we had control of the House and the Senate and the presidency, one of the things that had been highly recommended at the time was that the debt ceiling be eliminated, and the Democrats didn't do it. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is the fault of the Democrats, because it's not. But I do think that the next time that we've got the House, the Senate, and the presidency, eliminating the debt ceiling has to be the very first thing that gets done. Because this kind of blackmail, which is essentially what Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and others in the far right party are doing to Kevin McCarthy right now, and to everyone else. Like, by the way, and to every American. Like, unless you cut more stuff out of the government, we're not going to vote to keep it open. The only reason why they have the leverage to do that is because of the debt ceiling. And it is, and appropriations, but nonetheless, the debt ceiling is one of the biggest problems here. And I personally am like livid about it. It's the thing that gets me every single time is the way in which the poorest people in this country are harmed over and over and over again by this BS political leveraging, walk it to the brink kind of garbage that the far right is willing to do. And, I have to say that it's all connected, because when you feel like you've been left out of the social equation, you're more likely to be vulnerable to fascism. So, cutting off people's checks and saying it's the fault of the Democrats because they just want big government. It may be a lie, but it's a lie that works when people are starving, and particularly white poor people are starving. And so it's just, it's a party of hate and vengeance and harm. And I just really want everyone to kind of be very clear on what's at stake. Hallie, you can go back and watch the earlier part of the broadcast, but Social Security is not going to be cut off, at least for the time being. Now, if the federal government runs out of money, if this goes on for weeks, then everything can be impacted, all right? But there are certain reserves set aside for really critical services in the event that the government shuts down. And at the bare minimum, Social Security is going to continue for the time being. Okay. It's bad. Like, it's really bad. This next week is going to be really rough. Like, I just want everybody to be prepared for that, like, we're really in for it this coming week in terms of like the political brinksmanship and the horror of what they're willing to do. Okay. Couple of other things that folks should be aware of on the legal front. So, I just really don't even know where to start with this. So Judge Matthew Kaczmarek, who may be a familiar name to you out of the federal district courts in Texas. He's the guy who's trying to ban mifepristone with his judicial authority. He's the guy who has already like enforced abortion bans and enforced, various other far right-wing policies in Texas. He's a Trump appointee. He does not follow the law. He does not follow the Constitution. He's really, really bad news. So earlier today, he dropped an opinion in a case involving West Texas A&M University, where an organization, a campus-based organization, sorry, I'm like spitting on my brand new mic, you guys, where a campus-based organization called Spectrum A&M or something along those lines, wanted to host a drag show on campus to support and fundraise for the Trevor Project. For those of you who don't know what the Trevor Project is, it's an institution, a nonprofit that works to prevent suicide in LGBTQ plus youth. They do some of the most important work in the LGBTQ plus community that exists. Like I can't, it just brings me to tears. I mean, it just absolutely brings me to tears. This show was supposed to be a student fundraiser for that organization. The president of West Texas A&M told the president of the organization, the student body organization, they couldn't host a drag show on campus. And the organization, much to their credit, sued the university, the board of regents, and the president. And what they were seeking was very basic, which was a determination that drag is free speech. And let me just say something to anybody who's ever done any kind of First Amendment work or who has looked at this, all right? There's no question that like performance and art and, like Matt Damon showing up at the Hasty Pudding performance at Harvard wearing a dress has previously been considered protected speech under the First Amendment, all right? There's literally no basis to suppress drag performances in America. And yet, this judge has written a disgusting opinion that is so dismissive and so condescending, and that claims that drag shows are sexualized content like porn, and therefore the president is in the right. And he has denied this group the possibility of doing a drag show on campus to raise funding for the Trevor Project so that LGBTQ plus youth don't suicide. Now, I'm going to tell you that this opinion has no basis in law, but it's under the jurisdiction of the Fifth Circuit, which is currently considered to be the most conservative circuit court of appeals in the nation. And it will be appealed to the Fifth Circuit without question. And then it will probably go to the Supreme Court. And then we're going to have a real debate about whether or not drag shows in this country are going to be banned nationwide because this jackass on the bench has decided that he gets to decide whether or not people performing in drag are anti-woman and performing the equivalent of porn on stage. I mean, I cannot tell you how sick I am of, we used to have conversations in this country where like the Republicans would talk about judicial activism and how people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg were judicial activists and the like, right? This is not normal judicial behavior, okay? This is not within the scope of what judges swear to do when they take the bench. This is not upholding the Constitution of the United States. This is overthrowing it for political Christo-fascist reasons. And I just have to say that it really, Lydia Polgreen pointed this out this morning. It is not just the opinion itself that is so revolting. It's the fact that within the body of the opinion as well, he has done things like put the term quote, fundraiser in quotes, as if it's not legitimate to fundraise for an organization that provides services to prevent LGBTQ plus youth from committing suicide. It's appalling. And you should go read about it. This guy was confirmed in the Senate thanks to Donald Trump and thanks to the fact that we didn't have a majority, and he's got a lifetime appointment to the federal bench. There's so much about this that bothers me to such a level. It's really like hard to describe. We're going to have to see how this one plays out. I don't know, man. They pull a good panel in front of the Fifth Circuit, it could be overturned, but I'm going to tell you, this sounds like one that is like teed up for Supreme Court review, and I am not happy about it. All right. Other things that are breaking on the legal front this morning. Ken Chesebro, this is one that's rather laughable. Ken Chesebro has moved to suppress the memos that he wrote recommending the overthrow of the 2020 election. Okay. So I just have to say something here. Okay. You don't get to move to exclude the evidence that shows your guilt. All right. You can move to exclude for other reasons, like it's not admissible evidence, right? Or that it violates the hearsay rule, or that, like it's not relevant. Okay. But the actual documentation that you yourself authored as a criminal defendant that shows your guilt will not be suppressed. It's not going to be, he's not going to, it's just like, this is like yet another moment for like crazy pants lawyering on the part of the defendants in Fulton County. This one is not going to be granted, but everybody should be aware that he's trying to literally challenge the best evidence against him. All right. Also yesterday, and I meant to mention this yesterday and I did not, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss are continuing to seek additional redress from Rudy Giuliani. The trial was set in December for damages. He's already been determined to have, he's actually been found liable in this civil litigation already because he doesn't have any defense. All right. But there's a trial set for damages against him, which I'm just going to tell you, I think is going to bankrupt Rudy Giuliani. That trial is set for early December. However, they filed a motion today that fundamentally says that Rudy has not stopped, and he continues to defy the order that says that he has to stop defaming Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. So this is yet another reason where there may be additional liability found against him. And this does not bode well for the damages stage of his hearing either, because it shows that he has no remorse. So, I want to see Rudy done. And we'll see what happens about this between now and the end of the year. All right. Also in breaking news this morning, the president of the UAW has filed a complaint before the National Labor Relations Board against Tim Scott. For those who don't know, the National Labor Relations Board is a quasi-judicial body that oversees things like strike breaking and threats against unionization and unions, that also enforces regulations related to what people are allowed to do in relation to striking unions and unions generally. Well, Tim Scott, current presidential candidate, apparently told the president of the UAW that if you strike, you're fired. Okay. Striking is a protected activity under the National Labor Relations Board and under the law. Okay. You can't fire somebody for striking. If you do, the National Labor Relations Board is going to come for you. And so Tim Scott saying that to the UAW is a violation of federal law and the regulations of the National Labor Relations Board. So we knew that this was coming. And I personally thought this was a good move. And I also think that one of the good things that's happening right now is like the unions are playing hardball. By the way, the Writers Guild of America is back at the negotiating table now with the most senior officials of the 4 of the 6 major studios in Hollywood right now. Now, I don't think we're going to see a settlement of the WGA strike today. I would be shocked by that. Apparently, there's an awful lot of blackmail going on because people like Bob Iger and others are saying, like, take this deal or we're not coming back to the table for the rest of the year. They know that writers are starving and losing their homes and having to leave Los Angeles and various other things because they can't work. And they're not going to cross the picket line. But so many unionized workers are once again pointing out just the farce that is this, because literally all four of the folks, the senior officials that are at the negotiating table, are making like tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and yet refusing to actually negotiate to protect the pay and work of the Hollywood Writers Association and the Writers Guild of America. I mean, well, they're the same thing, but you get my point. These are super uber wealthy people who literally are like, once again, trying to say to striking workers, we're not coming back to the table until 2024 unless you take this ridiculous deal that we've offered. It's bad. So keep your eye on that as well. And, I'm just going to say this, like, all power to unions. I feel like I have to say this every time we talk about unionization on this broadcast. They are the backbone of worker power in America, and Godspeed, and don't ever cross a picket line. I'm just going to say, by the way, fast food workers are on strike right now in San Francisco and in various other locations. Don't ever go into a restaurant where there are workers striking out front, or a hotel for that matter. All right. Had a really interesting question today about folks fleeing Florida. And those of you who, for instance, know Brandon Wolf and know that I interviewed him on my podcast earlier this year, know that we had a conversation about people leaving states where their rights were under threat. And at the time, one of the things Brandon said was that he had debated leaving and that he was staying to fight. Well, he's now gotten a job as basically the press secretary of the Human Rights Campaign, which is one of the largest organizations to benefit LGBTQ plus people in the country. And he's moved to Washington, D.C. I'm really happy for Brandon about this. And I also had a long conversation with Joaquin Castro about this on my podcast last year because of trans kids and their families fleeing Texas when Governor Abbott signed that insane regulation saying that that basically state officials were going to investigate parents who were providing gender affirming care to their trans kids and could remove those kids from their homes. And what Joaquin said in that interview, what Representative Castro said in that interview was, you can't blame anyone for leaving a state to protect themselves or their families. I have friends in Florida right now who are making plans to leave. And I simultaneously do not blame anyone for doing that. I have to say that, it's the equivalent of blaming people who fled Germany in like 1938 because they saw the writing on the wall. All right. I know it's sad. I know it's really difficult. I know that for those of you who can't move, who are in those states, it's scary. And also, it's one of those moments where if you are under threat of having your child taken out of your home, or you're afraid of being murdered in the street, and let's not forget Brandon Wolf is a Pulse survivor because of all the anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric that is being tossed around by the governor and the end to trans healthcare and all sorts of other policies and stochastic terrorism that is being wielded against you, and you have the means to leave, I don't think anybody can be blamed for doing that. And I know it's really scary. I mean, I saw the comments that many of you made this morning that you're not putting political banners outside of your homes when you live in like largely red states because you're scared about the violence from the far right. All of that is very, very real. And I have to remind everyone that I still think we have to keep doing the work. And I'm going to remind everyone, particularly that those of us who are not multiply marginalized, all right, who are not in a marginalized identity group right now that is under threat of death, we have an obligation to keep doing the work. And I think it's a moral obligation. Okay. I think it's not something that we can walk away from. I'm not going to chastise anybody for not putting a banner outside of your house. I get it, but please don't stop doing the work. Don't stop showing up to campaign and canvass and assist the election of progressive and democratic candidates who can stop this rising tide of fascism in America. Please don't be scared into doing nothing. All right. And I really want everyone to not forget, okay, that particularly those of us who are perceived as being privileged, because I'm just going to remind everybody, like, you can be marginalized and it cannot be visible, right? we really have an obligation to keep going. And, again, I see this on both sides of the fence as someone with deeply marginalized people in my own household, right? And who are getting bullied and who have the experience daily of being told that they don't belong. All right. I understand deeply the need to flee for safety, and I will never criticize anyone for doing that because it's real. And we cannot be cowed. We cannot be frozen. We cannot be stopped by the threats of violence. And I've said this many, many times on the broadcast over the last 2 weeks. Today, Biden is announcing finally the establishment of an office of gun violence prevention inside the federal government. And one of the reasons why that is so critical is because any one of us could get shot doing anything right now, given the nature of the lack of gun safety protection in the country. Some states are better than others, right? There's an assault weapons ban in California. There's like a total gun ban inside New York City. That doesn't mean there aren't guns there, but it does mean that there's a lot less. I will tell you that I think that, we have to understand that fear is one of the weapons of the far right. And to the extent that you are able to mobilize between now and November of 2024, even if that means you're somebody who can't leave your house because you're immune compromised and we're still in the middle of a pandemic, there are things that you can do to continue doing the work. And so that's a little bit of a preview of what's coming tomorrow, because, by the way, tomorrow, when we don't broadcast live on Saturdays, there is a video dropping that is a video I've already recorded and edited and that's ready to load. It's actually already loaded. It's going to drop tomorrow morning, called How We Win in 2024. And it actually is kind of jumping off of many of the things that happened on Progressive Coffee Hour last Sunday. By the way, you should go subscribe at patreon.com/resistance live. Let's just put that banner up for 1 second, because it gets you Progressive Coffee Hour every Sunday for as little as $2 a month. And you also get the question feed. I will tell you that making this video was really fun because it's not about the high level, big picture things that we need our leaders to do. The video is actually about how you and everyone you know and everyone in your community and every single one of the people in this audience can assure that we win next November. And so it is very practical, and it is very much about what we need to do and how we're going to do it. And the fact that every single one of us has a role to play, and every single one of us is a part of the mechanism that saves democracy. So I hope you'll watch it. And beyond that, I really hope you'll share it, because I'll just tell you all, recorded videos take an enormous amount of effort to edit. Like, the project of getting that video done was my entire working day yesterday, beyond this broadcast and a call I had to do for our fall reboot folks, which was really fun, actually. But it's like a 9-hour, 10-hour editing endeavor to get a 15-minute video done and preloaded. So please go watch it, share it with anybody who needs it, share it far and wide, because it really is like I designed it to be a roadmap for how we get done what we need to get done. And I hope you all like it. I mean, it's very upbeat and very peppy and very optimistic and very hopeful and very practical. And I want as many people to watch it between now and next November as is humanly possible, because it's truly what I believe is necessary in order for all of us to win. It's like the best advice I can give, and with a lot of resources attached, by the way. So you can see that tomorrow morning, and we can talk about it on Progressive Coffee Hour if you're a Patreon subscriber on Sunday morning at 8:30 a.m. Pacific. All right. That's it for today. It's Friday. I'm just going to warn everybody. Big news always drops on Friday right now. I don't know what's going to happen today, but in addition to the Clarence Thomas story, I feel like there might be more coming. We'll see. I want to just encourage everyone, as I've said many times on this broadcast, to rest this weekend to the extent that you are able. Next week is going to be really brutal. I just think that this looming government shutdown and the fact that Kevin McCarthy can't lead, doesn't have the votes, is beholden to the fascist wing of his party, can't get anything done, is going to be really painful and difficult to watch when we think about the actual human impact of what's coming. So rest this weekend, okay? Rest. Take time out. Don't watch the news 24/7. Make sure that you're taking a breather and you're doing all the good things, like going outside and going for a walk and getting some sunshine on your skin, and doing all the things that we all kind of can, if you can do that. Not all of us can. And, doing the things we need to do to take care of ourselves physically, emotionally, and spiritually, okay? It's really critically important. All right. I will see all of you here on Monday at regular time. If I don't see you on Progressive Coffee Hour, but I should, it's only $2 a month, less than 10 cents a broadcast. You should get on over there and subscribe at patreon.com/resistance live. And I will see you all on video tomorrow morning in spirit. Okay. Have a great weekend, everyone. I'm sorry things feel so dire. They do feel dire today. I'm going to freely admit that. But also, we have to keep fighting because I believe in us. And I think that the outcome that we seek is ahead of us if we can just cross-collaborate, coordinate, and keep going across every element of our movements and our issues and our identities. So click the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. We crossed 5,000 subscribers overnight, by the way. I haven't even mentioned that, which is awesome here. I said this morning on Threads that like, it's not the 100,000 people total that we had on Facebook back in 2019, but it's a lot. And I kind of want to get to 10,000 people by the end of October. So share widely, please. It would be really good to kind of like amplify all the good stuff that we're talking about here as much as humanly possible between now and next November. All right. Much love, everybody. I'll see you on Monday or Sunday. And I hope everyone has a good weekend. All right. Bye.